Hey guys, so welcome back to our tutorials. In today's tutorial, we're going to talk about how we can create this pricing card using HTML and CSS. So let's get started. So right here on my bottom section, you can see I have a blank index.html file as well as an empty style.css file. And also I'm accompanied by some SVGs. So this is a arrow right SVG, which corresponds to these arrow right, and then we have the check circle which corresponds to these check circles. So if you need these exact icons that I'm using, you can head over to my GitHub repository. You can find a link in the bio. Go ahead and go to my GitHub repository, search for a repository called TikTok-projects, and look for a project called pricing card. So I don't know whether I can search here. So search for pricing card v1. So go to pricing card v1 and you'll find those assets here, and also the finished code is here. So if you find people asking where the finished code is, so this is where it is. So the next thing you're going to do is to install a font. The font that we are going to use here is called Poppins. So head over to fonts.google.com, search for Poppins font, and then click on it. Don't worry about the preview. Click on it. You can also write your own preview. My own preview. Then you can see how it will look like. But we don't care about that. So go ahead and click get font. Make sure here you have just one font. So you can go ahead and remove all fonts or remove a specific font. But right now I only have one, so I don't need to worry about that. Then the next thing is that click on get embed code. Under the web, import the CSS URL and then paste it there. All right, so the next thing you're going to do is that I have already linked my CSS file. So let's close this tab. I've already linked my CSS file. You can see it here. So this is link style sheet style.css file. This has to correspond to the CSS file name that is here on top. So the next thing you're going to do is to create the project. So the next thing here is I'm going to create a div with a class of card. So this one will encapsulate this whole section, and we are going to divide it into 3 sections. What am I seeing here is like we have a top section. We have another section here with a horizontal line. We have this middle section which has like the features, and inside the features you can see we have a feature item, and then on the bottom you can see we have a button. So this is the structure we are going to take, and let's start. So the top section, we said we create a div to hold this top section. The top section has 3 elements, so we are going to create them. So first of all is the pro text. After the pro, then we create a heading level 3, and this one will hold the price, which is $225.00. All right, and then after that we are going to use the per month. So we have pro 225 and per month. So this makes up the top section. So before we even continue, let's collapse the top section and then let's create the next thing. So which is the next thing that you can see? It's this horizontal line. We're going to use the default horizontal row in HTML, and we are done with that. Then let's continue to the features section. We just create a features div, and this div now has both the features. Now we have the features div, and we have the features, and then this here is like a feature item or a feature. So features, feature. This is the whole section is features. So let's create one of the features. So we are just going to create a div with a class of feature item. And then inside the feature item, what can you see? We have 2 more elements. We have the icon itself and the text. So the icon, I'm going to use an image. And the reason I did not attach font awesome icons is because is because Font Awesome icons is a whole new library that I'm going to attach just to use in the card. So I don't think that is reasonable. So that's why I went ahead and used SVGs. So the SVG you're going to use is the check circle SVG, which is still in our directory. So if you have not gone ahead and downloaded them, just go ahead and do it. The next thing is that after the icon, we have this text. So this one that says 5 social media accounts. So you can create a paragraph and say 5 social media accounts. And then you can copy these down because we have so many features. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can copy it down 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the second one is saying free platform access. So we can come here and change that. The next one is about marketing platform. So we can come here and say marketing platform. Then 24/7 customer support, like that. And then the final one is lifetime support. So we just copy and paste. So that's fantastic. We are done with that section. We can go ahead and collapse this section. So as we have done, we have just created a features section, which has all these features. And then we created each feature on its own. And then finally here we have a button. So just going to create a button, and this button has 2 elements in it. As you can see, it has a text and it has an icon. So we're going to use a paragraph for the text and say get started. Then after the paragraph, we are going to use an image, which now has the arrow right SVG. And with that, we are done with the HTML markup. So let's go live and see what we have. I already showed you how to go live. If you don't know, let me know in the comments. Right, this is what we get. So one of the things that you might realize is that some of these icons are too large. So we are going to resize them in the HTML. And the reason we are going to change them in the HTML is because in the HTML, the browser requests the sizes of the images. So right now, the browser is requesting the whole image. So what I could do is that I could resize this image using CSS. But now what will happen is that the browser will go ahead and request the whole image and then CSS crops it. So to prevent that, we can tell the browser what size are you going to request. So you can use option click or alt click on Windows. You're supposed to add on the images. So option click or alt click on Windows. And we want to add a width property here. So we can say width. And then we can say 20 pixels. This is the width we want to request. And you can see the images have been resized. But now we still have an issue with the arrows. So the arrow, we can go ahead and give the arrow a width of 20 as well. So width 20 pixels. Then now everything is aligned as we expect. The next thing is let's go to our styles. And the first thing we're going to do is to add some default CSS styles, which is a margin of 0, padding of 0, and a box sizing of border box. Okay. Yes, so these are the default styles. We have talked about them countless times, so we're not going to focus more on them. The next thing is let's grab the body. The reason you're grabbing the body, we want to add a background color. As you can see, this one is white, but should look like this. So the background color we are going to add is called, it's hash 010 A10. Okay, that's the background color we are going to add. And then you can see everything is not visible. So you can add a color of white. Now you can see them. And the next thing is that you can see everything is too close to the edges. So we can add some padding. So we can do a padding of 2rem. The next thing is that we want this card to be in the middle. This pricing card should be in the middle. So we are going to do a display flex here. Then justify content to the center. You can see now it goes to the middle. The next thing is to grab the card itself. We give it a class of card. So we are going to grab it and restrict its width. So we can go ahead and say .card width 450 pixels. So that one restricts the width of the card. Also, you might notice that the card is not visible. So we can go ahead and add a grayish background color to the card itself, which is hash 06 and 31B. You can see it is kind of faded, but that's okay. The next thing is, let's add a border so that you can see what we are working with. So we can use a border of 1 pixel solid, and then there is a gray color I want to use. So if you have a color that you are going to reuse, we normally add it to the CSS variables. And the syntax for creating a CSS variable is very simple. We say, I want a variable named gray, which will contain this value. And then, so if I say here, 1 pixel solid, and then I want to use my CSS variable. So I use the variable to evaluate a custom variable that I created. So we only have one, so we can say gray. So after that, what you might realize is that everything is too close to the edges. And this is why we add a padding to the card. So we can say padding to rem. Now you can see what the padding does. The next thing is that you can realize that these corners are very, very sharp. So we can go ahead and add a border radius of 20 pixels. Fantastic. So the next thing on the card is that we have 4 sections, I think 4, yeah. So we have the top, we have the horizontal line, we have the features section, and we have the button. So to make sure we can display this in a stacked manner, and also we add some gaps, we can use flex box. So you can say display flex, and then you can say flex direction of column. And then let's now come and add a gap of 1.7 rem. You can see now we get some spaces. So that's very fantastic. So the next thing I'm going to do is that we imported a font, but we have not used the font. So take note of the font name, which is Poppins. So I'm going to the body again and say font family. We say Poppins. As a fallback, we use sans serif. So where this Poppins coming from, you can see it here on top. Or else you can go ahead to Google where you copied this import link. On the bottom, you'll see the font family specification there. So, all right. So the next thing I want to add is another CSS variable for the bluish color. So the bluish color that is being used here on the features. So I'm going to call it primary color, and then it is hash 139 BFD. And then now here on the card, we want whenever someone hovers over the card, the cursor to be pointer. So you can say cursor pointer. So now when I hover here, you can see now the cursor is pointed. Fantastic. So the next thing we are going to do now is whenever someone hovers over the card, we want to change the background color, the color of the border to our primary color. So we can just do .card hover. This is how you get the hover state. So you say card hover state. Whenever the card is hovered, whereby it means that the mouse goes over the item. Then we add a border color of, use a CSS variable to evaluate and say our primary color. So now when I come here and hover, you can see now the border is changing color. So the next thing you might realize is that the transitioning from the whitish color to the bluish color is instant. To make sure that we get some animations or some easing, we can use a transition 0.2 seconds is, you can even say ease in and out. Now if you hover, you see that it's not transitioning immediately. All right, so the next thing we are going to talk about is this top hand section. So if you go to the finished version, you can see the top hand section has some different styles. So we can just grab the top hand section and say .top. And as you saw that the top has 3 elements in it, it has 2 paragraphs, paragraph 1, heading, and the paragraph 2. So we can go ahead here and we want to stack them as we did with the card. So you can still use flexbox and say display flex direction, column, and then you can add a gap of 0.5 rem. I can see these are the 0.5 rems between these elements. So the next thing is, now let's increase the font size for all the elements. You can say font size 1.2 rem. You can see the font size is increased, and then we can increase the font weight to 600. So that's fantastic, but now we want to add some other styles on this heading. So it's under the top section, so you can say dot top heading level 3, then increase the font size to something like 3 rem. Okay, fantastic. And then we can also make sure it's italicized, so you can say font style you can say italicized, so italics. This one looks fantastic. So we are done with that section, the top hand section. The horizontal line, we can work around the horizontal line by doing, it's only one, so we can tackle it and reducing its opacity. You can say opacity 0.6. I can see it's a bit faded. Then let's now go to the features section. As we said, the features section, we have the features parent, and the individual features have a class of features item, and then inside it has an image and a paragraph. So what we are going to do is grabbing the features. So we can say features, we want them to be stacked in a vertical way, so we do display flex direction, column, and then here we can say a gap of, so let's do a gap of something like 1.4 rem. Now you can see these features, we have some spaces between them. So the next thing is now to grab the feature item. So you can say feature item, and then you can say display flex, but now this one will be a horizontal line. They will be displayed in a row, the flex. So by default, flex direction is row. So we can see now the icon and the text are aligned in a row format. And then we can say align these items to the center. So now the icon and the text are all in the middle. Okay. And then finally, let's add some gaps. So we can say a gap of 0.3. Yeah. Fantastic. So the next thing is that we want to increase the font size of this. So this one is under the feature item. So this is under the feature item, then the paragraph. So what we can do here is dot feature item, and then the paragraph, and then we do a font size of 1.1 rem. Fantastic. You can see it now, it's a bit big. We are done with that section. So let's move on to the button. So first thing first, on the button, you only have one button, so we can grab it by its tag name. So first thing is to remove the background color. So we can say background color transparent. If I do that, the text is not visible, then we can say a color of white. You can see it now. And then we can also add a border. So we can say border 1 pixel solid, and then let's use our variable gray color. You can see it now. And then let's now make sure we display. You can see on the button has two elements. So the button contains a paragraph and the image. To make sure they are displayed side by side, we can use flexbox. So we can go ahead here and say display flex, and then save. Now you can see they are side by side, and then we can justify the content to the center. I can see here, but now let's add some paddings because we can see they are so squeezed. So what we are going to do is we can add a padding of 12 pixels. Now you can see the padding is 12 pixels. All right, so the next thing is that you can see these corners are too sharp. So we can go ahead and add you can go ahead and add a border radius of 20 pixels. That's fantastic. The next thing you can see that we need to add some gaps. So here where we are using the text box, you can say a gap of 0.3 rem. So you can see the gaps, and then you can align items to the center. So you can say align items. So the reason we are doing align items to the center is to make sure that this text and the icon are aligned in the center. This is vertically. So finally, the next thing we need to do here is to increase the font size of this text. So this text is under the button. So you can say button, the paragraph, then you can say font size 1 rem. And then you can see it. There we have it. So finally, what we need to do here is whenever you hover over the button, you want the cursor to be pointer. So you can come here and say cursor pointer. So whenever any button hovers, it gets to be pointer. The next thing finally is to add, whenever you hover over the button, you also want this border to be grayish. So what you're going to do here is say button hover, and then we can say border color, then our primary color. So whenever you hover over this button, you get the primary color as well. And that's it, guys. That's how you can go ahead and create such a pricing card. It's very simple. So thank you for watching and see you next. Make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends.